A man hiked for 10 rugged miles far into the mountains. He carried no food, no pack. All he carried was a container of muddy water. The man's destination was a clear spring. His intent was to bring it honor. He trudged the last mile or so up the steep trail, his lungs burning and his mouth parched from thirst. Finally, he topped the rise, and there was the spring, flowing out from the rock, clear and cold. The man sat down, caught his breath. Then he poured the muddy water into the clear, pure source. He watched, pleased, and thought to himself, the spring will be honored because I've brought an offering. In only a few seconds, the spring ran clear again. Then the man stood up and slowly started back down the mountain, his lungs still burning and his mouth still parched. Because amazingly, although he was desperately thirsty, he never drank from the spring. The man never drank from the spring. The Lord says, "Come, everyone who's thirsty, here is water. Come to me and you'll have life." Jesus said, "I am the living water. If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink." Today, as you gather to worship, remember, God is most honored by us when we are most satisfied in Him. Drink from the spring.
We are very honored this morning to be able to have with us BJ, who we first had contact with him through Johnny Ray, a week of compassion. We've had a long, wonderful relationship with Johnny Ray, and we contacted him when we were trying to honor Allison for her retirement, and connected us with BJ and his project of digging wells in Zimbabwe, and we did that at that time. And then when we came up with this theme of having our fall Bible study being Come to the Water, it just seemed like a natural thing to have as a project, digging more wells. And so I contacted Johnny Ray, and he said, well, BJ's going to be in the United States this fall. And I said, well, when he might be available. And it turns out it was today on World Communion Sunday. Can you figure out a better Sunday to have BJ here with us to share about mission project in Zimbabwe on a Sunday when we're celebrating World Communion, uniting Christians together around the world, and so we're just delighted to. I've got to hear him at 8:30, so I'm more excited than you are. And in fact, Betty's back here for a second round. She said it was so good. So, BJ, we welcome you here this morning. So glad to have you here. I was going to tell you just a little bit about him, because I got at the 8:30 service to say for the first time in public the word Zimbabwean.
Zimbabwean.
Zimbabwean. Okay. He does it much better than I do for some reason. And he's a native Zimbabwean, right?
Yes.
Is that closer?
Yes.
Okay. He went on to, let me see what college it was. You can probably tell me this. United College
of Education.
That's, one of the best colleges there in Africa. Has been a public school teacher there for about 20 years. Went on to be assistant headmaster, then headmaster, and then became the president of the World Christian Convention of the Christian Church, Churches of Christ, Disciples of Christ. Has done a number of things, and here in a football state, it's neat to know he is a football fan. Except his football's round, and he actually played on the Zimbabwean team for about 5 years, and so we're excited to have him here and the passion he shares for the ministry that he has with Showers of Blessing. Welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's a joy for me to be here with you. If I can just pass my condolences for the murders that took place a few kilometers from here. That was shocking, and as is shocking to all of us all over the world when we hear of shootings, particularly on young people, students, who still have a glorious life ahead of them. But anyway, that is the world in which we live, a world which really has been tainted and has lost the zeal to allow us to be called human beings. So we regret and, cry with all of you, particularly in this part of the world, as you mourn the death of loved ones. I bring greetings from the church, fellow disciples in Zimbabwe, and particularly those villagers in rural areas who live in dry, arid places with virtually no source of clean water around them. And when Christians, thousands and thousands of kilometers away, think of them, you can imagine how much they are grateful for your generosity. So this is one church that has shared their love with our people in a special way. So for me to be here today, particularly on this special Sunday when we dedicate it, to the Lord's Supper, and know that the whole world around us, particularly within our brotherhood, we are all separating as the one body of Christ. So I feel blessed, Bob, to be here, particularly to be with people who love us so much. But before I delve into my speech, I just want to read first, and then we'll see a visual, and then I will speak. We all know the story of Jacob's well, the woman, and his encounter with Christ. I want to start from verse 4 because you know the story. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. When a Samaritan woman came down to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me water? Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone to the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Let's just watch the visual.
The water that people get in the rural areas is normally very, very dirty. So they get water from river beds. They share the same water with animals. That becomes a very dangerous thing. You have waterborne diseases, a situation which affects children especially. The distances that people have to walk to access water, distances of close to 8 kilometers, 3 trips per day. That is energy lost. The Showers of Blessing Trust was formed primarily to address the needs of rural communities in the provision of clean drinking water with the installation of a bore. Water becomes available at a nearer point. So when they have their own source of water, that empowers them. That gives them their sense of pride. Development comes in many ways. The developments around the water are not necessarily just the drinking. Better houses are built, and things like shops, provision of schools, health facilities like clinics as well.
Since we have donated the borehole, we are now doing the projects of gardening vegetables, and now living a healthy and happy life. Thank you.
We make visits to our bores just to check on the developments around the bores, and we get feedback from the community on how the bore has assisted them. It is very vital that communities are involved right from the choice of the positioning of the borehole.
Takatarisira kuti tinyatsoteka mvura yakachenawo nezvipfuwo zvedu pamuzogona kuwanawo mvura yokumwa.
We always just make sure that the committees that they've been set up to maintain the bore are in operation. It is very, very important for the community to learn to look after their facility. Providing clean water, it has really empowered communities. On a daily basis, over 1,000 people benefit from just one bore per day. Tatenda chaizo. That means thank you very much.
Don't worry about the GMP, WW.org. This happened to be one of the things that just happened as I was preparing to come. A lady was sent from Australia to come and get this video for the Australian audience. So it was too good for me to just ignore. I decided mine was not good enough. I'll take this one because it's powerfully done. But you know, our partners here are Week of Compassion. So any donations have to go through Week of Compassion. Back in the early 2000s, I was president of our churches, and our vision at that time, which was also the vision I remember Dick Ham sharing with me, it was also the vision of the disciples, going up and opening churches. We had that as a defined goal. And we went into the villages, employed a few evangelists who went about to open churches in the rural areas. But at one of these preaching points, villagers started an argument on where the actual preaching point would be at. At that time, it was under a tree. They had not built anything. So when that happened, I was asked to come and intervene. So I went to the area, and a big crowd of believers came to try and argue their point out. But as I began to talk, an elderly woman was literally trotting, running, coming to the place where I was going to be meeting everybody. When she arrived, instead of sitting down and listening to what I was saying, she decided to disrupt my meeting and says, BJ, can you stop for 1 minute? I need to tell you something. I said, okay, Mom, wait, you'll tell me after. I says, no, I have to tell you. So, typical African, I don't disrespect adults. I try to listen to what you are saying for a minute. And she says, you know, I am late. I wanted to come to this meeting. But this morning, I woke up at 3:00 a.m. in the pitch darkness of the night and walked all the way, worried that I might step on a snake and it will bite me. But I had to go and fetch water so that I would be back in time for this meeting. I'm sorry I'm late. But you know, BJ, the water we drink, we draw it from a dam. It's dirty. Cattle, goats, sheep, and human beings drink from the same place. And you know, our children get sick because of this water. But there is no other source of water. Honestly, BJ, you have friends overseas who can help. I then said, okay, we'll talk about this later on. But as she says, your friends, there was a chorus of, yes, yes, we are suffering in this area. They were nodding their heads and so forth. Then we continued the business of the day. And at the end of it, I remember going back to Bulawayo. My mind could only see one thing. This elderly lady, the size of my mother, And yes, she was right. Christ would not turn his back on a need so vital like water. Water is life. And when I got back, I am in the habit of thinking things over at night. I remember having this vision of an organization that would address the plight of the needs of people we are ministering. It's all fine to go and preach to people. But when you preach to people and you're aware of needs that are obvious, and you know Jesus could have done something about it, we were bound to think afresh. And Showers of Blessings Trust, the name came very clearly, would be the appropriate name. And starting from that, everything else is history. Today, we have drilled over 120 wells, and a big chunk of that from all over the United States, and proud to say from this congregation. But, you know, whilst we talk about water, water, as you can see, is a vital need. In the rainy season, which is not very far away for us, because towards the end of October, we expect our rain season to start. And it is in that season that waterborne diseases are prevalent. And what has been very interesting is that a survey of all the places where we've provided wells, rarely do you hear of deaths from cholera and other waterborne diseases. And that is all. Thank you to our dear friends who have blessed our nation in a special way. But as I reflected on the essence of water, and what a powerful visual that you showed earlier on. But, you know, as I reflected particularly with Jacob's well, where Jesus had an encounter with the Samaritan woman, you can see striking pictures of what happened. Water is a necessity. I don't think there is anybody or anything in the world that is as vital to a human being as water. You can go without food for days and days for as long as you have water to drink. You can fail to get food, you can fail to get bread, you can fail to get anything, but you can still survive for a number of days for as long as you have water. Withdraw water and see whether spending a day is possible. That shows how vital water is. It's a finite resource in many places in Africa. But when I read this story, I captured the gist of one thing that can help us as Christians. When Christ met the Samaritan woman, every time she asked questions, he gave her a striking answer to try and probe her into understanding eventually who he was. Woman, if you knew who you are speaking to, you would have asked him not for this water, but for living water. Very striking. The man was curious. She continued to ask questions, until she got to a point where she began to have a glimmer of who she was talking to. Are you the one we are waiting for? We've been told that the Messiah is going to come amongst us, and he will address all the ills of this world, and we will have a glorious future thereafter. And what does Jesus say? He reveals himself for the first time. When she knows it's Jesus, she did not have to wait. She left the tin, rushed back to the suburb to go and shout loudest, I have seen the Messiah. Come see the Messiah. Those are precious words. We who have been touched by Christ must always be able to carry on our mouths. Come see the Messiah, the one who is coming to address all our problems. I have met him. Come. Bob, does that not make us look stupid when we were about woman preaching, woman officiating? Yeah. This woman converted thousands and thousands of people, and they got to know the Messiah through a worthless woman. You know, sometimes when people judge, I get worried. Because all it does is take us off focus on the cross and on Christ and keep us worrying about things that are not significant. It is the Messiah, the one who provides living water that she saw on the day. You know, if you come to a drilling well, I can tell you, Bob, now I'm stronger. When you come to a drilling point, the villagers all gather together because on that day, they sense God at work amongst them. I hope we're going to get the water. I hope our problems are going to be over. And when eventually they are fortunate and water shoots into the air, there is a lot of excitement. Some are jumping and shaking each other. Some are doing all sorts of things. Some are dancing. Some are singing choruses, praising God. But I don't forget the day I saw one elderly woman remain stuck to a chair, sitting on the ground, crying. I went close and said, Mama, why are you crying? She kept nodding her head and nodding her head. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. God has blessed us today. God has blessed us today. I cannot believe we are going to have fresh water. We are going to have clean water. He has blessed us today. You know, these are experiences that we celebrate on your behalf. You give the money. You are excited because you know it's a command from him. Go ye, make disciples all over the world. But you don't know how much that gift of water is bringing hundreds and hundreds of people to church. Because they see the reality of the living Christ move amongst them through the gift that you have made. And the shock of the century. We have always drilled water amongst people where we have opened churches. But it so happened that there was a desperate need in another area where a councillor kept saying, please, BJ, we need water, we need water. My people are suffering. We sent our guy who was talking to go and make a survey, and he came up with terrible news. This is serious. There is virtually nothing. So after we drilled the well, what do the people say? Thank you. You've given us water, but we need more. Our children are living like wild animals. They've never heard of Jesus. When we were young, we were taught about Jesus. Here we have no preacher, we have no person. If somebody dies, we just throw him into the pit and bury. But we need dignity amongst us. Can you open your church? All they knew, the churches of Christ are drilling wells for people. The church of Christ, the church. Oh no. Yes, we have water, but we need living water. Do something for us. Eventually, when I went to make a survey, I discovered there was no way to rent a house for a pastor. And we decided our first point of call is to build a cottage so that there is a pastor living amongst these people. Living amongst the people. And the instruction was, forget about going straight into evangelism. Go visit every home. Tell them, I'm a pastor. I work with the churches of Christ. But I am not a Church of Christ pastor. I am a pastor in this community. You have problems, call on me. We'll come and pray together. You have a death in your family, I will come and help you bury your dead. The church, that church has been the fastest growing church ever. To date, over 150 baptisms. It's unprecedented. But that is what happens when people don't assume the living Christ. Everything around them is built in such a way that they see the reality of the living Christ amongst them. So, when you give to projects like those, you give because you know you have to give, full stop. But you can never visualize the impact of what that gift does. We're buying vegetables in the city, we're to dry them so that we can eat for some days. Today, we don't need to eat dry vegetables. We just need to go to the well, draw water, make small vegetable gardens, and water our vegetable gardens. They're community vegetables. Each one has its own beds. And you grow your own vegetables, and your children are fed from that. The hard-working ones even sell in order to buy the extra needs in a family. You supplied water to drink. It's not just water today. The people don't see water. You've exported the living Christ amongst them because of your generosity. So, my prayer is that let's all be aware, like the Samaritan woman, to keep asking God to reveal himself in a special way. It might not be water, but there are always ways in which we can ask him to be in me and to drive something that will make his ministry bring out the reality of the living Christ in a world that has become something else. The Christians need to work harder and harder to project ourselves so that our living Christ cannot just be known, but can be seen by communities that we live in, by the world around us, and the world beyond our borders. May God bless you as you continue to find the living Christ and to find more creative ways of making him real in your own situation. You have made it for my people. We cannot thank you more.
Thank you so much, BJ. In watching his video, the thing that really stood out to me was the difference in the water where those kids were going down in that well and digging it up there, and it was so dirty, and the clarity of the water that was coming out of the wells that had been made. And I thought, you know, how much like that other video where the guy, he poured the dirty water into that river and it clouded it up, and then the clean water overcame it. And this week we have seen some dirty water. And what we need to do as Christians is just to pour that pure living water of Jesus out there to just purify and cleanse all this dirt that we see out there.